Joseph Stalin rose to power in the early 1920s, when the Soviet Union was in sharp focus after the Bolshevik Revolution, but despite the world's attention, the country was far from stable. The Russian Empire's collapse left deep wounds and divisions among its people. Civil war was raging, and poverty was widespread. The future of Russia, let alone the Soviet Union, was far from clear. Yet within a span of 30 years, by the time of his death in 1953, he had transformed the USSR into one of the two global superpowers. His rule was characterized by extreme brutality, yet undeniable results. The question is, what was the source of his power? How did he turn a nation of chaos into an international powerhouse? To answer this, we need to look beyond his title. Unlike many leaders, Stalin wasn't elected as a president or a prime minister. He was the general secretary of the Communist Party, a seemingly administrative and rather obscure role. This might seem surprising, but this seemingly minor position gave him control over the levers of power. He could decide who got promoted in the party, who was sidelined, and even who vanished mysteriously. With each passing year, he placed loyalists in positions of influence while quietly pushing out potential rivals. Over time, this systematic approach to power consolidation gave him an iron grip over the Communist Party, and by extension, the entire Soviet Union. Now, you might be thinking this sounds a bit too underhanded. Well, in the world of politics, especially during those turbulent times, this was par for the course. What makes Stalin's approach unique is the quiet confidence and patience he displayed. He bided his time, made methodical moves, and slowly built a network of support that ensured his ascent to power. This wasn't about being the loudest voice in the room. It was about being the one that everyone else listened to. His rise is a lesson in strategy. Just because a role doesn't seem powerful at first glance doesn't mean it lacks influence. Sometimes the quietest position holds the loudest power. But securing power is one thing, maintaining it is quite another. Stalin faced numerous internal and external threats throughout his rule. The approach he took to neutralize these threats is a masterclass in strategic thinking. Stalin didn't play fair. He didn't try to win over his enemies or negotiate. He systematically took them down. However, he didn't go for an all-out attack that could have unified his opposition. Instead, he played a much more subtle game. He weakened his opponents step by step, removing their influence, casting doubt on their loyalty, and isolating them from their allies. Once they were vulnerable, he made his move, eliminating them from the equation. This process might sound lengthy, but it was actually quite efficient. By breaking down complex problems into smaller, more manageable pieces, Stalin was able to tackle them one at a time. This allowed him to chip away at the opposition steadily and surely, until they no longer posed a significant threat. It's a tactic we can all apply in our own lives. When faced with a daunting challenge, break it down into smaller parts and address them one at a time. The next tool in Stalin's arsenal was something far less tangible, yet equally potent: controlling the narrative. Whoever controls the story controls reality. Stalin understood this well. From school textbooks to newspapers, magazines, and even art, he used every medium at his disposal to paint a specific picture of himself as the protector of the Soviet Union and the true successor to Lenin. History was rewritten to fit his narrative. His image adorned every public space, and any form of criticism was seen as a dangerous act. Now, you might say, come on, that's propaganda. It's exactly what he wanted you to think. He cultivated an environment where questioning his leadership was not just difficult, it was dangerous, and that in itself was a powerful tool. While you can't control the media on a national level like Stalin did, you can control the narrative within your own circle of influence. Every interaction, every conversation, and every project is an opportunity to shape how others see you. Make the most of it. Stalin also turned the Soviet Union's biggest weakness into its greatest strength. When he took over, the country was lagging far behind the Western powers in industrialization. It seemed like an insurmountable challenge, but Stalin turned it into his greatest triumph. Through a series of ambitious plans, most notably the 5-year plans, he pushed the Soviet Union to rapid industrial growth. Factories, railways, and heavy industries that once seemed impossible sprang up across the nation. Within 2 decades, the Soviet Union went from being an agrarian society to becoming an industrial powerhouse. How did he do it? One word: focus. Instead of trying to do everything at once, He went after the biggest weakness head-on. He identified the areas that needed the most urgent attention and poured all his resources into them. It's like if you're playing a video game and your character is weak in one area, you wouldn't try to improve everything equally. You would focus on leveling up the character's weakest link. And that's exactly what Stalin did. The results were nothing short of spectacular. It's fair. Now, it would be fair to talk about Stalin's strategies without acknowledging the dark side of his rule. His regime was marked by brutal purges and show trials that eliminated anyone who dared to oppose him. But there's still a valuable lesson to learn here about the nature of power. Power isn't always visible. Sometimes it lurks in the shadows, waiting to strike. Stalin understood this well. He didn't hold back when it came to eliminating threats, even if those threats weren't in immediate danger. He took them out anyway, fearing they could pose a risk in the future. This might sound like overkill, but it was actually a smart move. By removing potential threats before they could grow, he minimized the chances of any surprises. It's a lesson we can apply to our own lives. Don't wait for threats to materialize into full-blown problems. Address them at the source. Another tool Stalin used was turning allies into enemies, and vice versa. He was known for his ability to make even his closest allies into fierce rivals. Then, when the time was right, he'd pit them against each other, weakening both sides and ultimately eliminating them. Sounds kind of Machiavellian, right? Well, that was precisely his strategy. He created an atmosphere of mistrust and suspicion, which kept everyone on edge and unable to form lasting alliances. It was a brilliant move. By sowing seeds of discord among his rivals, he prevented them from uniting against him. And even if they did team up, he had already created enough mistrust that they wouldn't be able to work together effectively. And finally, there's timing. One of the most underrated aspects of Stalin's strategies. He understood that the success of any move depended on the timing. He was famous for waiting patiently for the right moment to make his move, and when he struck hard. A great example of this was his handling of World War II. Initially, he made a non-aggression pact with Nazi Germany, buying time for the Soviet Union to prepare for the inevitable German invasion. When Germany did invade, the Soviet Union was ready. Stalin even managed to turn the war to the Soviet Union's advantage, pushing his troops into Eastern Europe and expanding his sphere of influence. He essentially waited for Germany to exhaust itself and then capitalized on the opportunity. In personal and professional settings, this means knowing when to act and when to bide your time. Sometimes rushing into action can lead to failure. Patience is a virtue, and waiting for the right moment can make all the difference. In conclusion, Stalin's journey from a relatively obscure party official to a feared dictator was nothing short of remarkable. But his methods, while undeniably effective, were brutal and unethical. As we analyze his strategies, let's remember that the ends do not justify the means. Stalin's rise to power and his strategies for maintaining control were marked by deceit, manipulation, and brutality. We should study his methods not to emulate his actions, but to understand the complexities of power, the strategies employed by those who seek it, and the pitfalls that come with its acquisition. While some of his tactics might seem tempting, they come at a steep moral cost. Remember, power without ethics is just tyranny, and in the long run, that's never a sustainable path.